At Cox, we're always a step ahead, like your dog who barks before the doorbell rings. Senses trouble before there's trouble, like advanced security that blocks online threats before they happen. And knows when the peanut butter's hiding medicine. That's why we keep surprises off your bill. With Price Lock, the price of your internet and mobile plan won't go up for up to 3 years guaranteed. Right, Sir Berkalot? Cox, a step ahead. Requires at least 500 megabits per second speeds and gig unlimited mobile. Taxes and fees excluded from Price Lock. Mobile data speeds reduced after 20 gigs.
Tired of the negative news and flashover substance? It's time for Today with Dr. Wendy. Dr. Wendy Patrick is a trial attorney, patriot, and PhD with a passion for people and a penchant for politics. Dr. Wendy brings you the headlines, streamlined news you can use. It's time to be informed, engaged, and entertained. Now, here's your host, Dr. Wendy Patrick.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Today with Dr. Wendy. I'm Wendy Patrick, and my co-host Larry Dershman and I are delighted to actually have a guest tonight that espouses one of the things that National Law Center for Children and Families cares so deeply about, and that is preventing child trafficking. And with no further ado, we are delighted to have our next guest for the entire hour. Larry, who do we have on the line?
Yes, Wendy. Before I introduce our guest this evening, I wanted to provide a little background on our topic tonight, which is child sex trafficking in the United States and how to stop it. During FBI Director Kash Patel's testimony in front of Congress in September of this year, he stated he needs partners to combat child trafficking and assist in the recovery of approximately 300,000 foreign children who came over the unsecured border, where only 37,000 of those 300,000 have been located. As well, Kash Patel said we need help finding American missing children, which is estimated to be 100,000. In addition, President Trump, he spoke before the United Nations this September, and he said that we need help in finding missing children to recover them soon before the predator human traffickers can get a hold of them, because they may die during that ordeal. Well, our guest tonight is Joseph Travers. He's a former police officer who is now a private investigator and pastor, and has been featured in USA Today, People magazine, and he's been on numerous network outlets talking about the topic of rescuing missing kids, mainly child sex trafficked kids. But we'll let him expand on that in a few moments. Welcome to the program, Joseph.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Joseph, I have to say, I'm very intrigued by the pastor, professional, and private investigator duo. That goes together. I cannot tell you how many of us are kind of in both arenas, the pastoral, the ministry, and also the law enforcement side. But I have to ask, just given everything that you're doing, I know you've been featured in USA Today, People magazine, I mean, so many things. How did you get into locating missing children?
Well, when I was in police work and then later on and transferred over into private investigation, I wasn't born again until I was 37 years old. And at the time, while I'm running a school, I grew a private investigation school to become the largest in the United States. Through that process, I became born again. And then I thought to myself, oh my, here I am, 37 years old. And I'm finally, after all these degrees, even published my first textbook, I'm like, oh, this is completely different. I need to live for God, the transformation. So I started to do things using what I was equipped with. So the first thing I did was a jail ministry, because it was a natural. And then from a jail ministry to a homeless ministry. And while I'm going through this process of waiting for God to tell me, what's next, I read an article about United States Navy SEALs going overseas and rescuing children from other countries. And I knew what was going on in this country. This is about 2009, that while I was a police officer in the 80s, there was a transformation of the takeover or the organization of trafficking drugs in this country. And what happened was the street gangs formed a coalition with the cartels and the prison gangs. Well, about 2008, they decided to put in this organization I call the Evil Triad, on their menu children to sell for sex. And I knew this, and I read about the seals, and I thought, this is unnatural. So I called the editor of the magazine. I read the article, the Orange County Register, and they connected me with a Navy SEAL named Jeff Bramstead, who was working with this, and he introduced me to a Master Chief, Kirby Harrell, who is still on our board of directors, and we decided to implement a plan. How do we do this in this country? How do we set it up so we can help and find the children that are being trafficked in the United States of America? So it was a calling from God is basically how I got into it. It's like, how do I use the talents that I have in 37 years for his kingdom?
Wow, it sounds like a perfect match. Hey, Joseph, how bad is the problem of child trafficking in the United States?
Well, just let statistics speak for themselves, and you touched on a few of those. The foreign, and we concentrate on missing children here in this country, American. So there's other organizations that go outside the United States, but as far as I know, we're the only preventive investigative organization in this country that looks for missing children that are American children here in the country. We've even been outside of the country and recovered 5 American children from Mexico. So it's a whole different way of doing things. But then, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, there's about 300,000 missing kids that go missing, American kids in the United States. Wow. Now, according to a study by Dr. Amy Carpenter from here in San Diego, University of San Diego, there was a study done which actually outlines how the street gangs are involved in the child trafficking, but also that about 33% to 40% of the runaway children and the missing children that get trafficked. So if you put that together, out of the 300 missing children a year, 130 are being trafficked, 130,000 per year.
You know, one of the other questions that comes up a lot is they want to know the ages of the children that are trafficked, and they also want to know the breakdown of boys and girls. What are the statistics there?
Well, we found, and I know I've read a lot of statistics on boys. First of all, we've helped recover 5 boys, by the way. None of the 5 boys we recovered were trafficked, so that was a whole different issue. A couple of them were with the girls we were looking for. But the vast majority of children being trafficked or girls. So I don't know what the percentages are, but they're very, very high. Actually, we've assisted parents and law enforcement in 283 cases now. So we have yet to have a parent call us about a boy that they believe has been trafficked. So
what about the ages?
That is the middle age, and according to, again, the study from Dr. Amy Carpenter, is 15 and a half. So out of our 283 cases, that's the average we get too. It's 15 and a half. Now we've assisted with children as young as 11 years old, and of course all the way through 17.
Oh, that is interesting. Joseph, where do most of these trafficked kids come from? Are they from Latin America or the U.S.? And has President Trump's strict enforcement of our national borders had any effect on the flow of trafficked kids?
Well, that's a very good question, because we sort this into 2 different categories. The foreign kids that we're talking about, which are about 300,000 plus, they really don't know the exact number. The ones you were referring to that I think they found 30,000, which is 10%, which, would take 10 more years to find them, which you just can't do, because what's going to happen to these kids in 10 years? I mean, It's horrible. The way they control the children is through fentanyl and heroin. So, but we also have the American children, which we focus on, is American kids. But on the solution to trafficking, which we'll talk about later, President Trump has already done 2 things that are going to assist in the successful stoppage of foreign children being trafficked here. Number 1, of course, is control of the border. which he's been quite effective with. And the other thing is the people who, this evil triad who runs this part of it are the prison gangs in the prisons. Now, when we go back before the control of the border, it wasn't the Border Patrol that controlled the border. It was the cartels.
Wow.
So you need to take control of the border back, which effectively, seems like he's effectively done that. But then you have the prison gang members who still run their enterprises or criminal enterprises from the prison, because the prison gang members still run the prisons, both state and federal. So what you need to do is find a way to get these career organized criminals out of our prison system, which it looks like might have been started with Secretary of State Marco Rubio with the prisons in El Salvador. So, to keep progressing with that theory, that would really help fight against child sex trafficking here in America with the foreign children.
That's a really interesting point. So what you're saying is don't keep them in American prisons, but deport them and have them be incarcerated in their home countries. Is that sort of the thinking?
Yes, and because we're talking these big organizations, when they get imprisoned here in American prisons, they're still running their enterprises. They smuggle in cell phones, and there's ways they do it. I don't want to disclose some of the techniques, but I know them by interviewing members of the big prison gangs, and I don't know if you know the names of them, but they all started way back in the 70s into the 80s. You have there's two Hispanic gangs, a black gang, and a white gang. They divide themselves into races purposely. But you have the Mexican Mafia. Most people are familiar with them. They call themselves La M. You have the Nostra Familia, which was a Northern California, which has started, and factions of their groups across the country. You have the Black Guerrilla family, which are gang members. And then you have the Aryan Brotherhood, which comprises of the white neo-Nazi type street gangs like the Nazi lowriders.
All right. Well, you know what? This is great. It brings us almost to the break. Let's pick this up on the other side. We are talking to Joseph Travers. You're listening to Today with Dr. Wendy, and don't touch that dial because we'll be back in a flash.
News cycle lowlights have no place here. You're listening to the headline highlights on Today with Dr. Wendy on The Answer San Diego.
Since 1991, the nonprofit National Law Center for Children and Families has been fighting to protect children from sexual exploitation. The National Law Center offers the latest investigative training techniques to police, probation officers, and prosecutors on fighting sexual predators and human traffickers. The NLC also offers human trafficking awareness training to members of the public. Schedule a training for your church or organization today by visiting nationallawcenter.org. That's nationallawcenter.org.
It's time for more news you can use. The headlines streamlined. It's time for more Today with Dr. Wendy. Now here's your host, Dr. Wendy Patrick.
I think I found it. Welcome back to Today with Dr. Wendy. I'm Wendy Patrick. My co-host Larry Dersham and I are talking with Joseph Travers, former police officer, now a private investigator, and pastor. How's that a combination for you? Joseph, right before the break, we were talking about incarceration of human traffickers and where we incarcerate them to make sure they're not shot callers behind bars in order to make sure they can't continue a criminal enterprise even though we have them currently incarcerated. And, I know you know all of that, and I'm also familiar with Jamie's research. We know a lot about, thankfully, because of people like Jamie, we know a lot about what's going on in terms of how this manages to be as profitable as it is. I hate to put it that way, but that's why it's such a big criminal organization. Let's turn now to how your organization goes about finding and rescuing trafficking kids.
Well, there's two different types of investigative procedures for finding missing children. Number one is the one we use, and I think we're the only organization in the country that uses it. It's called the preventive method. The other method is the reactive method. Really quickly, the reactive method is when you go after the heads of these street gangs and cartels and prison gangs, and usually for narcotics. Then from there, that leads you to the children that are being trafficked. But that is the long way around, and you're never going to defeat the whole problem doing it that way. What we do is preventive. We go after runaways because we know 33 to 40% of all runaways are going to end up being trafficked. So we try to first find them before the trafficker gets a hold of them. But that is really how you get into it, because we use a system. It's a software system that we've invented and refined over the last 10 years we've been in operation. And what that system does, it's a matrix layer using social networking and different applications and everything, using AI and chat GPT. And it goes after when we find the predator who's been soliciting the child through their cell phone. And that's how we find the kids. And then we can take the information, package it up, and give it to law enforcement.
Oh, that's so interesting. I want to talk about the solutions that you have. You have a 4-step program. But before we do that, something that was really interesting to me is how do they, like I'm talking about mainly the American teenage girls, for example, how are they brought into this? Is there something called the Romeo method where they're kind of sweet-talked and then it goes down the path that way?
Yes, that's called the Romeo method. And what happens is first of all, let's go to the methods that is very rarely used. Okay. There was a movie called Taken a while ago.
Yes.
I'm sure you've seen it.
Yes.
That is rarely used in this country. And the reason why it's rarely used, it is used sometimes, but rarely, because our law enforcement is very good at what they do. So they get a call of a kid now that gets snatched in a car or something. You're going to have helicopters all over the place. I mean, you got cameras everywhere. It's just the odds to the bad guys are saying, let's just don't do it that way because we're going to get caught. Okay. So, thank you, Lord, for our great law enforcement. But the Romeo method, yes, is how they do it. And they do it through the public schools, the junior highs and the high schools. And they look for the young women, the young girls rather, that are sitting alone on a lunch bench, or they flatter them with certain things, or they invite them to parties. But mostly they use this. They use this computer that's in your child's hand. And one of the things that exasperates this is this new trend where these young girls want to be influencers. And so what they want to do to be an influencer, they want to get a lot of friends, right, for all these different social networking applications. So they might be bringing in these people that want to do them harm. Mm. And that could be, and there's stories, I can go after true stories, how that has actually happened, where a young girl, like a 14-year-old girl, let's take one in Nevada, 14-year-old girl starts talking to some guy, right? And he says, oh, yeah, I'm from San Diego, and you're so beautiful, and, all that Romeo stuff, right? So he sweet talks her to where she decides, well, why don't you come up and see me? Oh, I got to drive all the way to Nevada. Why don't you come down and see me in San Diego? I live on the beach, right? And so she decides, she sneaks out of her window at night and goes with this guy who's actually a 27-year-old street gang member from San Diego. She's 14. Mom comes to take her to school the next morning. Daughter is gone, windows open. Mm. She calls the police department. They come and take a police report. Now, one thing your audience needs to know, there is no such thing as a police agency that will look for a runaway girl on this as one of two things. Number one, he needs urgent medication or medical treatment. Or number two, they have proven evidence that she was taken. Mm. Well, the evidence is here. And unless you know how to extract it from the cell phone, you can't prove that. So the police doing their thing, they take the report, they send it to National Center for Criminal Information Center run by the FBI, which now puts a bulletin out. So if a law enforcement officer runs across them, of course, they could pick them up because now there's a police report as a runaway. So this gang member picked her up, took her down to Mexico, and then injected her with heroin and started selling her in Mexico. Wow. That's where we found her. And we had to coordinate with the local police department and the marshal's department and ICE and everybody else. Got her back, and now he's in prison where he belongs in Nevada.
I'm so glad that had a happy ending. It just sounded awful. But, you bring up something, Joseph, that I know a lot of our listeners haven't thought of. we know that, it's the flattery and it's the, targeting the girl that isn't used to receiving selective attention in order to, form more of a bond. But what I think is new is the social influencer angle. I mean, that is really fascinating. That is one of the motivators for some young people to do things that they probably otherwise wouldn't, definitely shouldn't do. So I think that angle is really a wave of the future, but it also reminds me of how important it is for our parents who are listening to know what your child is doing on that phone. I know parents give their kids phones because they want to be able to get in touch with them. They want to be able to text back and forth, all of the right reasons. But I also know that they should know their child's friends. And, if they take the child's phone away, whose phone are they going to use? Those may be of also very good evidence for police agencies that are trying to figure out, was a girl taken, or more likely was she sweet-talked into making that trek to another city in order to hook up with somebody that ended up being a trafficker.
Correct, and you're absolutely correct, and that's the solution we'll get into. Is we're trying to right now get a hold of someone in the Trump administration, whether it's Kash Patel of the FBI or Kristi Noem of Homeland Security, because we have a program that we know can manipulate that what's hidden in the cell phone for the proof that in fact she was actually abducted or seduced away, and it's not just a runaway. So that's exactly what we're doing. And what you're talking about, the influencer, that's really important. But another thing you brought up is just as important. You need to know your child. You need to be not just a friend of your child, but you need to be a parent. You need to know what's in their cell phone. Taking away a child's cell phone in junior high or high school probably isn't going to work. Okay. But one thing you can do is make sure your child has a proper community. And what I mean by that is friends. Do they go to a church youth group? Are they hanging around with other kids that have the same morals that you have and the moral standing? Because as we know, in the world, there's a lot of immorality out there, a ton of it. And that's what they do. When they seduce these girls, they try to break down their moral structure and make them feel that the immorality is okay.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I want to make sure we get this all in, and I don't know if we can go into super detail on it, but don't you have a 4-step program to kind of end this problem or greatly lessen the problem of child sex trafficking? And isn't the first step border security and designating the cartels as terrorist organizations, which I think Trump has already kind of done that? Is that a first step, and has Trump got that under control, that part?
Yeah, the first step with the terrorist organizations, absolutely, and getting the border under control, and then working now on prisons, of course, out of country. But there's 2 other steps, and one of the steps is the computer program that we have initiated that needs to be taken across the country now. We have 10 years of a track record with helping families on 283 cases. Okay, and it's a proven commodity where this program needs to go now to every state, every county, and every city. And that's the third solution. The fourth solution is the reason the police can't go after the runaways, who are the ones who are going to end up being trafficked, is because they don't have the resources. But in our plan, in our program, how we use everyone, we use licensed private investigators. So you can use a licensed private investigator as boots on the ground for a fraction of the cost of a paid police detective. So the solution, that's the 4th step, is when you get to the point where you have a runaway report, then you use the program to figure out, okay, what really is happening in the cell phone. And then when you have to see if one of the clues in the report that you get from the cell phone data, you said for the boots on the ground, you set a licensed private investigator down to get eyes on to see, is this really where we're supposed to go or not?
Joseph, because we're almost at the end of the show, I have to get this in. I know a lot of parents are listening, and we all know that back in the day, before social media and everything was online, parents would look for jewelry, expensive hand designer bags, things that they knew their child couldn't afford. What is it now? What are the kinds of things? I mean, the one that comes to mind is online coupons that the parents would only see if they were on the child's phone. What else are some signs of trafficking or that rich older boyfriend that parents can look for today?
Number one is a circle of friends that they're with. That's the big one. Number two, drug abuse. If this is kind of like the way it works now. We're talking about the evil triad. Today, in today's society, if you show me a street gang member, I'll show you a drug dealer and a predator. Wow. They're all one and the same.
Wow.
And so what you have to do, and the way they control the kid is through drugs. It's through fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamine.
That's great.
Hey, Joseph, what's your website? We're at the very end of the show. We got a hard break, but I want to make sure we get your website in.
SavedInAmerica.org, SavedInAmerica.org.
Terrific. Thank you, Joseph, so much for joining us. That was fascinating. I hope you'll come back, because like Larry was saying, we had a lot more to get to. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us again. We'll see you next Saturday night, same time, same place. You're listening to Today with Dr. Wendy and my co-host Larry Dershon, and I wish you a blessed week.
Thank you for joining us for Today with Dr. Wendy. You can learn more about Dr. Wendy and how to become a guest or sponsor of the show by visiting wendypatrickphd.com. That's wendypatrickphd.com. Tune in every week at this same time as Dr. Wendy will engage and inspire you with an upbeat viewpoint on the highlights of the day. This has been Today with Dr. Wendy on The Answer San Diego.
California has millions of homes that could be damaged in a strong earthquake. Older homes are especially vulnerable to quake damage, so you may need to take steps to strengthen yours. Visit strengthenyourhouse.com to learn how to strengthen your home and help protect it from damage. The work may cost less than you think and can often be done in just a few days. Strengthen your home and help protect your family. Get prepared today and worry less tomorrow. Visit strengthenyourhouse.com.